If you've been scrolling through your news feeds this morning, Saturday, January 24th, 2026, you probably have a bit of a pit in your stomach
Yeah.
because the world feels, well, let's just say precarious, is putting it politely.
It's a high-stakes weekend, no doubt about it.
We are watching the United States and Canada neighbors, siblings, usually the closest of allies, staring each other down in what looks like the final seconds before a massive trade war.
And this isn't a small skirmish?
No, I'm not talking about a little dispute over milk or lumber.
Sure.
We are talking about President Trump threatening a 100% tariff on everything coming from Canada.
Everything. It's total economic severance. The nuclear option in trade policy.
But here's the thing. I don't want to just sit here and panic over the headlines. We all know what is happening. I want to understand why it's happening, and honestly, if I should be selling my stocks on Monday morning. So we're going to look at this through a different lens. We found a brand new paper from the Global Review by Fareed Novin
Economic Coercion and Strategic Autonomy.
with the catchy subtitle, A Bayesian Game Theoretic Analysis of U.S.-Canada Trade Relations.
Right.
Now, I admit, when I saw Bayesian game theory, my eyes glazed over for a second.
It sounds like a math lecture you'd sleep through.
Exactly. But once I got into it, I realized Novin isn't just crunching numbers. He's basically built a decoder ring for what Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney are actually doing
He's treating this whole crisis like a high-stakes poker game.
to figure out who's bluffing, who's signaling, and who's going to fold.
And that is really the only way to make sense of this. I mean, if you just listen to the shouting matches on cable news, it looks like pure chaos, like emotions running wild.
Right.
But Novin's point is that if you look at the math, these are actually calculated, rational moves. They're risky, sure, but they follow a logic.
So our mission today is to decode that logic. We need to figure out the math behind the brinkmanship.
Okay.
But to do that, we have to rewind the tape a little bit. Because 10 days ago, things were relatively calm. How did we get here so fast?
The domino fell on January 15th. That's when Canada signed what they called a preliminary trade agreement with China.
And this wasn't just a let's be friends memo, right? This was a serious deal.
Oh, it was a significant pivot. On the Canadian side, they agreed to let in 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles.
49,000. Wow.
And crucially, they slashed the tariff on them. It went from a prohibitive 100% down to just 6.1%.
So they basically rolled out the red carpet for Chinese EVs.
They did. But you have to look at the quid pro quo. In exchange, China dropped their tariffs on Canadian canola from 84% down to 15%.
84 to 15, that's huge.
Huge. And they resumed imports of beef, lobster, and crab.
Okay, so if I'm a farmer in Saskatchewan or a fisherman in Nova Scotia, this is the best news I've heard in years.
It restores a $4 billion market for canola alone. Politically, for Carney, that secures a huge base of support in the prairies.
But here's what confused me. Usually when a U.S. ally gets cozy with China, especially on something sensitive like EVs, Washington goes ballistic immediately. Right.
But the source material points out that on January 16th, the day after the deal, Trump's reaction was weirdly chill.
It was. He actually called it a good thing. He essentially just shrugged and said, good for them.
So he didn't care, or he didn't notice.
Oh, he noticed? But at that moment, he didn't see it as a threat. But then the mood shifted.
Davos.
January 20th, the World Economic Forum, Prime Minister Carney takes the stage. Now, he could have gone up there and said, look, this is just a small agricultural deal. We love America. Don't worry.
I didn't do that.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Went on the offensive. He didn't name Trump explicitly, but the target was obvious.
I have the quote here because it really stood out to me. He said, "One cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit when integration becomes the source of your subordination."
Source of your subordination.
Right.
That is a heavy phrase.
That sounds less like a trade partner and more like someone declaring independence.
It was a rallying cry. He called for middle powers, places like Canada, Australia, the EU, to act together against being pushed around. And it worked.
Yeah, right.
People noticed.
It landed. You had leaders from Finland and NATO praising it. The paper says even Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, said U.S. leaders were texting him in shock, saying, wow.
So Carney essentially stood up on the world stage and poked the bear. And that is when the temperature in Washington went from chill to nuclear winter.
Drastically. Trump's view shifted from, this is a nice little trade deal, to this is a betrayal.
So what did he do first?
First, he revoked Canada's invite to the Board of Peace, which is a global gateway initiative. Symbolic, but a clear snub.
And then came the hammer. Today, January 24th.
The ultimatum. Trump threatened that if the China deal stands, the U.S. will slap a 100% tariff on all Canadian goods.
Not just EVs.
Not just EVs, everything from oil to lumber to maple syrup.
And his justification is that Canada is becoming, what, a drop-off port for China.
Right. The fear is that China ships goods to Vancouver, slaps a Made in Canada sticker on them, and slides them into the U.S. tariff-free. He views Canada as a backdoor.
Okay, so that brings us to the present moment. We are on the brink. And this is where I want to use Novin's paper to understand what's going on in their heads. He talks about Bayesian updating. Can you explain that in a way that doesn't require a whiteboard?
Think of it like a detective story. Or better yet, think about when you start dating someone new.
Okay.
You have a prior belief about them. You think, okay, this person seems nice, pretty chill.
Sure, that's my baseline assumption.
Then you go to dinner and they start screaming at the waiter because the soup is cold.
Okay, immediately I'm thinking, whoa, not chill.
You just did Bayesian updating, you took new information, the screaming, and you updated your probability of what type of person they are.
Right.
In game theory, the U.S. and Canada are doing this constantly. The U.S. is trying to figure out Canada's type.
What are the options?
Novin simplifies it to two types. Is Canada low autonomy? Meaning, are they the traditional little brother who will cave as soon as the U.S. raises its voice? Or are they high autonomy? A country willing to suffer actual economic pain to prove they're independent.
And I'm guessing, before Davos, the U.S. assumed Canada was the low autonomy type.
Historically, that's a safe bet. Canada usually aligns with the U.S. on the big security and trade issues. But then Carney gives that speech.
The subordination speech.
In game theory, we call that a costly signal.
Why is it costly? I mean, politicians give speeches all the time. Words are cheap.
Not when you say them at Davos in front of the entire global elite. Carney staked his personal and political reputation on that speech.
Oh.
If he comes home and cancels the deal now after talking about subordination, he looks incredibly weak. He looks incompetent.
So because the political cost of backing down is so high, the signal is credible.
Exactly. So the U.S. looks at that and thinks, wait, he burned his bridges. He might actually be serious.
And the paper calculates that shift in thinking.
It does. It suggests the U.S. updated their probability. They now think there's a 70 to 75% chance that Carney is the high autonomy type. They realize this isn't just a bluff.
But this streak goes both ways, right? Canada is also trying to figure out Trump's type.
Correct. Canada is asking, is Trump high resolve? Is he actually crazy enough to destroy the economy to make a point? Or is he low resolve? Is this just a bargaining tactic?
And this is where the paper talks about a commitment problem. I found this fascinating.
It's the core tension of the whole standoff. Think about the 100% tariff threat. It's a very smart move before Canada signs the deal.
It's a deterrent. Don't do it or I'll burn the house down.
You're right. But Canada did it. They signed the deal.
And now?
Now that the deed is done, actually striking the match, imposing the tariffs, becomes economically irrational for the U.S.
Because it burns your own house down, too.
Precisely. It's what economists call a time inconsistency problem. The threat was rational yesterday to scare them, but carrying it out today hurts the U.S. almost as much as it hurts Canada.
I want to dig into that hurt. Because I think there's a misconception that the U.S. holds all the cards here. People think, oh, Canada needs the U.S. market, but the U.S. can live without Canada.
That is a dangerous misconception. Novin's paper highlights just how deeply integrated these economies are. I mean, we aren't just trading finished products. We are building things together.
There was one stat in the source material that just blew my mind. It was about the automotive industry.
The border crossings.
Yeah, it said that during the production of a single vehicle, parts crossed the U.S.-Canada border an average of 7 times.
7 times. Think about the logistics of that. A piece of steel is made in Hamilton, shipped to Michigan to be stamped, sent back to Ontario for assembly.
So if you slap a 100% tariff every time that part crosses the line...
You don't just have expensive cars, you have no cars.
Yeah.
The North American auto industry ceases to function.
And it's not just cars. The paper mentions energy.
The U.S. relies on Canada for 60% of its crude oil imports. 60. You can't just replace that overnight from somewhere else. If Trump shuts that down, you are talking about gas prices skyrocketing across the U.S. immediately.
And aluminum.
85% of U.S. aluminum imports come from Canada. Construction, aerospace, soda cans. It all gets hit.
So the paper estimates that if Trump actually followed through with this, it would raise U.S. consumer prices by 1 to 1.5%. That's immediate, painful inflation.
And it would slash U.S. GDP. That's why the paper argues there is a credibility gap. The threat is so extreme, so damaging to the U.S. that Canada might look at it and say, you won't do it, you can't.
Yeah, it's a game of chicken. But Trump has headwinds too, right? He can't just do whatever he wants. The paper mentions Congress.
Right. Senate resolutions like SJR's 37 and 77 show that Congress really hates these sweeping emergency tariffs. They've tried to stop them before.
So he's fighting a battle on two fronts, against Canada and potentially against his own Senate.
Exactly. But Carney isn't exactly free to do whatever he wants either. He's leading a minority government.
Which is a very precarious place to be during a trade war.
For sure. He needs the support of the prairie premiers, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. They love this China deal because it sells their canola and beef.
Right, they get their market back.
But then you have Ontario, the manufacturing heartland. They are terrified. If the U.S. blocks Canadian cars, Ontario's economy evaporates.
So Carney is walking a tightrope. He can't back down completely without looking weak. Remember that costly signal? But he can't afford a full trade war that destroys Ontario.
Which is why he's trying to call in backup, the middle power strategy.
He wants to build a coalition. He's looking at the EU, Australia, Japan.
The idea is that if all the middle powers stand up to the U.S. together, it's harder for the U.S. to bully them one by one.
It sounds great in a speech. Middle powers unite. But the paper points out a flaw here, the free rider problem.
It's the classic problem with coalitions. Everyone wants the benefit of standing up to the bully, but nobody wants to be the one to get punched in the nose.
So is the EU actually doing anything?
They're offering plenty of praise. Great speech, Mark. So brave. But are they offering money? Are they offering to cover Canada's losses if the U.S. cuts them off?
No.
No. So Canada is out on a limb, and Europe is cheering from the safety of the ground.
Okay, so we have the setup. We have the players, the stakes, the constraints, and the math. Now let's get to the part everyone wants to know. How does this end? Novin actually runs the model forward to the USMCA review in July.
He does. He assigns probabilities to 3 different scenarios.
Let's start with the most likely one. What's the smart money on?
The paper assigns a 65% probability to a scenario called coercion success moderate.
Moderate coercion success. What does that look like in the real world?
It means the 100% tariff threat is a bluff. It doesn't happen. The suicide pact is avoided.
Phew. Okay.
Instead, we get a messy compromise. Canada keeps the China deal. They don't cancel it because Carney can't afford to look that weak. But they add strict transparency mechanisms.
What does that mean?
Basically, they invite U.S. inspectors in. They share data. They prove that the Chinese EVs coming in are staying in Canada and not leaking into the U.S.
So Canada keeps its autonomy, but gets a chaperone.
And the U.S. still extracts a price. The paper predicts the U.S. will impose targeted tariffs. Not 100% on everything, but maybe 25 or 40% on specific sectors.
Like EVs and electronics.
Exactly. Just enough to be painful, but not enough to crash the economy.
And the big trade deal, the USMCA.
It gets renewed. But Canada likely has to accept tougher rules of origin. For example, cars might need 75% North American content to cross the border duty-free. It tightens the leash.
So everybody claims victory. Carney says, I stood up to Trump and kept the China deal. And Trump says, I made them pay and tightened the rules.
That's the equilibrium. It satisfies the domestic politics on both sides without economic suicide.
That sounds reasonable. But that leaves a 35% chance of something else.
Well, there is a 25% chance of mutual escalation.
The bad timeline.
This is where the game theory goes wrong. Trump thinks Carney will fold, so he hits hard. Carney thinks Trump is bluffing, so he hits back. Neither side blinks.
And you get the 100% tariffs.
You get the tariffs, Canada retaliates, supply chains snap, and we go into a severe recession in North America.
A recession that nobody actually wants.
Right. But history is full of wars that nobody wanted, but everyone stumbled into because they miscalculated the other side's resolve. That's the danger.
And the last 10%.
The Trump backs down scenario. The paper thinks it's very unlikely that Trump just walks away and lets Canada do whatever it wants. His reputation cost would be too high. He has to be seen winning something.
So if I'm betting on a messy, painful compromise.
Yes, a world where trade is a little harder, prices are a little higher, and the alliance is a little more bruised.
You know, it really feels like we're watching a high-stakes poker game where folding looks like weakness, but going all in means you lose your house.
That is a perfect analogy. And for you listening, the key thing to watch in the next few weeks isn't just the speeches, it's the specific policies.
What should we be looking for?
If you see Canada offering transparency or data sharing on those Chinese EVs, that's them looking for the off-ramp. That's the signal for compromise.
And on the U.S. side?
If you see the White House talking about targeted enforcement or sector-specific actions instead of blanket tariffs, that's them blinking. That's them backing away from the cliff.
I want to leave us with a final thought here. The source material brings up this idea of diversification. Canada is trying to lower its dependence on the U.S. from 75% to maybe 65 or 70.
Which is a huge shift, historically speaking. For decades, the Canadian strategy has been hug the U.S. close. This is a strategy of keep your distance.
If Canada pulls this off, if they take the hit, survive the targeted tariffs, and keep their China deal, does that mark the end of an era? The era where the U.S. could just snap its fingers and dictate terms to its allies?
That is the deeper question. If a middle power like Canada can stare down the U.S., take the punishment, and keep standing, it changes the power dynamic of the entire Western world. It shows that American hegemony has limits. Or the economic pain Canada is about to suffer proves that resistance is futile, that the gravity of the U.S. economy is just too strong to escape.
We are about to find out.
We certainly are.
Well, I feel a little better understanding the math, even if the stakes are terrifying. We'll be watching those tariff headlines with our new game theory lenses. Thanks for helping us decode the madness.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening. Keep your eyes on the border, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.